Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, document fraud is a $20 million problem, but one Irish company has developed a solution. Ronan Burke, one of the co-founders of Inscribe, joins us now to tell us more. Ronan, we'll be discussing Inscribe and how it detects fraud in documents supplied to financial services companies. But first, I'd like to get an insight into your own background.
Thanks for having me, Karl. For sure. I originally grew up in Limerick, studied electronic engineering, and shortly after graduating university, I started working on this company and have been building it since. As you mentioned, Karl, we help financial services firms detect fraud.
So how did yourself and your co-founders, Conor, Oisin and James, identify this problem in the market that needed to be addressed?
So it was actually an experience my co-founder Conor had at a national bank here. So he was working at a consulting firm at the time, and they were deployed at this national bank, and they were tasked with automating the onboarding flows for various different products that this bank was offering, such as checking and savings accounts, mortgages, personal loans, etc. And he basically saw firsthand the struggles the risk teams at this bank were having in terms of reviewing customer information that was being supplied. So let's say you're opening up a bank account, you need to provide proof of address or proof of identity, or you're applying for a mortgage, you need to provide proof of income via bank statements and payslips. And these proofs were basically clogging up the system and causing a lot of inefficiencies, and not only inefficiencies for the bank, but also a poor customer experience as well. And so when he saw that, we discussed it at length at the time. We didn't immediately act upon it, but about a year after that, we actually started speaking to some fintechs out here in San Francisco. And when we learned that they too had the same or similar problems, we were like, okay, there's an opportunity here. And from there, we started speaking to more folks, saying, hey, we're considering building a solution here. If we built it, would you buy it? And we started getting traction from there, and off we went.
And Ronan, how prevalent is document fraud in the financial services sector, and what form does it usually take?
Sure. So based on the data that we receive across millions and millions of applications, we see about 5% of applications contain some form of misleading information or document tampering. So, for example, a very common requirement for many banks and financial services firms is to, prove that the person does in fact live in the country that the bank or financial institution, is located in. And in that case, you provide a proof of address document such as utility bill. But it's, extremely common for, folks to modify the name or the address in those documents to try, get access to the system. And, in some cases, it's relatively innocent, but, still not allowed. However, in other cases, it's part of, money laundering activities and parts, of the, underworld that, can cause a lot of losses and damage to the financial services ecosystem. Other examples would be, for example, when you apply for a credit product like a mortgage or a personal loan or an auto loan, where, somebody, themselves, they might just inflate their income or cash balance to get better terms. Or it could be, third-party fraud and much more malicious in terms of this person not even existing as a real identity. However, they assemble the various different characteristics of a good identity and then apply, get the credit product, and then, don't repay, or they might repay the first 3 installments, but then they don't pay the remainder. And so it can cause various different problems for financial services firms. And, we've seen, 5% is what we see across our applications, but the reality is, to actually detect all of that is actually quite tricky. And so a lot more goes, undetected, and that causes a good bit of losses for firms as well.
It's a fascinating area. So how does Inscribe actually detect instances of fraud?
Sure. So there's a couple of areas in which we do. So the first is forensic. So when folks modify a document, the way we think about it is basically if you make a change to a document, it leaves behind a whole series of cookie crumbs that we can go and detect. And so, for example, if you modify your income or the cash balance or the line items on a bank statement, that leaves behind evidence in the file that can be uncovered. And so you might not match the fonts exactly the same size, or the alignment might be off a little bit, or we can recover the previous version. or there's suspicious software in the metadata, etc. So that's like one category. The second category then is we know what good looks like in terms of a good document. And when we find anomalies on various different characteristics from those good documents, we can spot those as well. And that's what's really helped us, outperform a lot of other existing solutions in that we can spot anomalies in the same way a human would spot an anomaly by building up intuition. So if you take, a risk analyst at a bank, they've seen thousands or millions of documents themselves, and they have a good intuition. But we've replicated something similar in that we've seen millions of documents, and we know what good and bad looks like, and the anomalous ones are very clear to us. So across those two detection categories, we provide a trust score, and that trust score helps banks and fintechs decision on which applications should be automatically rejected, automatically accepted, or which ones should continue into manual review.
And does your software actually work across all document types?
So we primarily work on English language documents, and then we do have a focus on the most common documents like bank statements, utility bills, tax forms, things of this nature. And so we do constrain it a little bit. However, we are continuously expanding this. And so we aim to serve two use cases. So one, account opening. So when you're just opening up an account or a financial product for the first time. And then the second use case is underwriting. And so the documents that are associated with those two workflows are a core focus for that.
So how did you go acquiring clients for this?
So it was actually quite an iterative process. So when we got started, we actually worked with a couple of fintech lenders out here in San Francisco. And we didn't really have much of a product. However, these fintechs were very willing to work with us once we had something that could detect a little bit of fraud. And then over a 6-month period, working alongside with them, we were able to build more and more detectors, and then get up to a point where companies were pulling it from us basically. And it was a case that we needed to kind of see real world fraud to build detectors that were going to be reliable enough. And so that was the key, really, was to get early customers who are very willing to work with an early stage startup. And that's what really got us off the ground.
So talk us through the growth which the business has enjoyed to date and the number of clients which it now works with. Yeah,
so we're working with, many of the leading fintechs out here in the Bay Area or in the United States, and also some large institutions. And yeah, we've been, growing 3x year over year for the past 2 years, and planning, growing at a similar rate over the next couple of years. And, as we become, more prevalent in the market, we'll also start working with more and more of the, traditional financial institutions and traditional banks out here in the US as well. But yeah, a lot of our existing client base is, US-based fintech, online-based lending companies and fintechs.
And what about the insurance sector? Is that on your roadmap?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the insurance side, there's an equally large fraud problem. So both at the point of application, so applying for a policy, but particularly at the claims point. So at the point of claims, that's where, evidence is usually provided to, support some kind of claim. And at that point, information such as, do you have ownership of this particular item that you insured? So let's say you insured your MacBook Pro or your laptop, then it was stolen, and then the insurance company asked for evidence of, hey, did you actually own this? Then you provide an invoice of the purchase, and in those cases we see quite a lot of tampering of those documents to prove that somebody did not in fact own something. However, in a lot of cases that's just it wasn't the case. So in the future, we do see an opportunity there. However, for now, we're focused primarily on financial services. But yeah, beyond financial services, there's a lot of use cases across healthcare, insurance, government, Fortune 2000 reimbursements, etc. So we're very excited for the future and the various different types of applications here.
So Inscribe has recently completed a funding round of $25 million. Talk us through that journey.
Yeah, so we've been on the venture-backed journey for a couple of years now, and so we got started with our first venture round in 2018 of $3.2 million, and then a Series A in 2021 of $10.5 million. And so the most recent round of $25 million, Series B, was the third round in this journey. And once you get onto the path of a seed round like we did back in 2018, it's one of those dynamics where, you get onto this pathway of high growth, and then with the eye towards future profitability. And, it's very common for, multiple rounds to occur, and then to maximize growth. And then once you get to a point of sustainability, you turn your eye towards profitability and larger outcomes. And so this is one step along that journey for us. And in terms of how it comes about, I think, ultimately strong business, good growth, good market, good team. A lot of those factors, the very simple things, come into play. And also just in terms of building a network, building relationships, finding good partners that want to go on this journey with you. And ultimately it's getting partners who are aligned with the mission. We're enabling trust for the future of online finance, and a lot of folks are excited about that.
So how will you be using that $25 million?
Yeah, so primarily, nothing relatively new, a lot of more of the same, however, more of it. So we'll be investing in our R&D efforts in Dublin. So we have a product and engineering team based out of Dublin, and a lot of it will be going towards hiring more engineers and also expanding our go-to-market activities in the US as well.
And do you think that due to the value that you've created with Inscribe software, that you could become an acquisition target in the near future?
It's not something we think about. We're here to build a long-term enduring company. We have so much work ahead of us. We have a huge amount of opportunity ahead of us, and we know exactly where we want to go for the next 5 years. So not currently on our minds. We're just excited to continue executing.
And finally, Ronan, what advice do you have for aspiring tech entrepreneurs here in Ireland?
Yeah, for me, it always comes down to something I learned in an accelerator program out here in the Bay Area called Y Combinator. But it's basically the search for the unique insight. I think most great businesses are built off a unique insight. And for us at Inscribe, was basically that, a lot of document fraud occurs and not many folks were trying to solve it. And that unique insight, which Connor found, my co-founder at a bank, was that initial insight. And, it's about looking out for those types of opportunities. And once you see it, be aware of it. And, if you think it can, lead to, a future opportunity, go tackle it. So for me, it's always being on the lookout for unique insights. And then from there, if you want to act on it, do. And, take the journey as it comes.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Ronan Burke from Inscribe, and it's certainly a company to keep an eye on in the future.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South